Welcome to the CX Sessions from the Customer Experience Innovation Institute. Every episode, we provide an innovative perspective on customer experience from the people who are changing your world, one experience at a time.
Welcome back to CX Sessions from Melbourne, Australia. I'm your host, Simon Chris, and joining me from Sydney today is Angelo Azar. Angelo, welcome to CX Sessions.
Yeah, thank you, Simon. It's awesome to be here. So I really appreciate the invite.
No worries. As I do with all of the Australians that I interview, I start off by first acknowledging the traditional custodians of the lands on which we work, rest, and play, and pay my respects to elders past and present. And I always like to do that. Let's start off a little, Angelo, in case there's somebody in the CX world that hasn't met you yet, which I doubt, but in case there is, talk to us a little bit about yourself, your journey into CX, how did you get here, that type of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to. And I've been really lucky through my career to meet a lot of extraordinary people along the way. So, thankful for the opportunity to have that. And I've spent a fair bit of time in the world of CX through a number of different industries. The majority of that time has been in financial services, so either in banking or in insurance specifically. I'm sure you've heard this before. I was actually listening to another one of your podcasts a few days ago, and someone said exactly the same thing, but I basically fell into this. I'd originally been studying at uni physics and mathematics, I shared a story with many people, but I was getting kicked out of more labs than what I was allowed to stay in. But I really enjoyed the theoretical side of it. Just wasn't like one of the practical, I guess, applicants of physics particularly. But then I moved into economics and finance, and I just loved it. I've always loved economics particularly. And so I went and joined IAG, working in their call center part-time, like while I was finishing my last semester, with the intent of moving into either a finance area or actuarial area. And then in the call center, just loved it. I've always really loved people, like human beings, understanding how people work, understanding how sort of I can help people, which is really cliche, but being able to sort of understand those dynamics and work within them. And then at IAG, I had like a really amazing time there. Like I had wonderful leaders, all of whom took a real great interest in me. I had the opportunity to learn about so many different things around the industry, how to like work with people, how to deal with people, more importantly, how important being customer centric is to everything you do. I'm in touch with many of those leaders still today, but I always say to others, I was so lucky to be exposed to these people very early in my career. And I spent a number of years in different roles like there. So, whether it's contact centers, retail branches, spent time product underwriting, but then over the years, like just other opportunities that were similar. So, St. George Bank, I looked after all of the sales for retail and business bank across the contact centers. Moving into like MetLife and then starting up their distribution channel here for a short while. And it just progressed into a more, let's say specific route of insurance. So Commonwealth Bank, Hollard, and currently I'm at Honey Insurance. So, we're a tech-driven startup insurance company, but not your typical legacy insurance company. We really like to use technology first, digitization, data-driven interactions to make the entire experience a more pleasant one for customers. Philosophy is around, how can we help prevent you from needing to claim? And the reason for that is because claims can be quite unpleasant regardless of how well they go. And if they do have to claim, I want that to be a really customer-centric process too. But just really focused on customers. And that's the reason why I chose to do this. So I've always loved it. Just loved people, and whether it's customers or my own teams. So.
And it's funny, nobody ever calls the claims department on a good day. Right? There's a reason that they're calling.
Yeah, that's right, and it's so important.
I love
to look at it that way.
And I think I think it's interesting too. And I think it's an important message for people who are in contact center roles right now. And, they may not be listening to this podcast, but some might at, say, a team leader level, to say that, ultimately there's an opportunity to make your way from frontline agent to chief operating officer. And that may not be a straight line, but there is a line that makes it there. And you're a great example of that. And for me, I find people that have been on the phones doing the call center job, and just like you, I started out exactly like that on the phones for Telstra, have a different perspective of how contact centers work, because you always look at it from the agent and the customer's point of view.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And I've tried over the years and continue to bring other roles within the organization closer to that contact center, not just for the sake of it, but because it's the best place to be able to hear like directly from people who speak with customers all day, to be able to hear from customers themselves. I often liken it to, we might be in back-to-backs all day. You hear that all the time, I'm sure, right? And those back-to-backs are typically like a day of, let's say, 8 meetings for argument's sake. But people in a contact center environment like have dozens of meetings, if not more than that. And every one of those, these people go in listening first. They have a tremendously difficult job. They represent your organization. I learn so much from them every single day. I can tell you now, even up until recently as this morning, the biggest things that I learn around what we can continue to do better and continue to double down on organizationally come from those customer interactions. And I just love being so close to it. Like nowhere else offers that. No other role in an organization, in my mind, offers the opportunity for balancing strategy as well as being that close to customers and what they're saying to us directly.
Without breaching any confidentiality, could you give us an idea of one or two of those ideas that have come from the floor about things that could be done better or things you could double down on?
A lot of them come down to, like, embarrassingly, whenever I bring them up, they're quite simple suggestions, right? And you sort of think about them and you're like, why didn't we think about that all the time? But I think it's because we're trained over the years and through our career to ignore the simple. We look beyond like the simple things and we're trying to, like, we forget the whole back to basics, have solid foundations, like all of the things that resonate and make businesses like sustainable and quite successful. But there's quite a few of them. Like a lot of them at the moment are focused on technology just because of the way that we use them. It's hard to sort of think about a specific one without, like, from today. I had some buddying today and I actually had some buddying yesterday that I put into my schedule routinely, just so I can build that habit and make sure I don't forget it. But a lot of them are very specific to our environment. Like it talks about the technology that we use, for example. But if I was to give you an example, let's say claims. Okay, so claims is something that I try to sort of take people through understanding that it's, like you said, you don't call a claims team on a day when something hasn't gone wrong. It always starts from a position from which you've lost something. So a position of loss, you're speaking with somebody and you go straight into like a process. And that's partially because of the fact that this industry is quite scripted, like because it's highly regulated. So part of the suggestions from customers, simply enough, was around how do we humanize more of that experience? And I was speaking with somebody yesterday as part of off the back of the buddying and as part of a coaching session. And I was like, what is a tool that we can use? And there's one that we have now, right? What is a tool that we can use and extend so that claims consultants don't have to worry so much about the technical aspects of their job? We can simplify that and they can engage with customers, have a conversation. But it's difficult to do this first when we might have designed processes that are so heavily rigid around the technical aspects. And so there was a couple of suggestions that fell into that bucket for us specifically. Yeah, and sometimes it's a nature of the industries we work in. I think it's a product of what we measure. Like we don't often measure the subjective aspects of teams. We measure the objective ones because they're easier. Plus, at least I can speak for myself. working in environments close to my entire career where everything's measured, it's positive, like it's good, but perhaps some of the
Hmm.
drawbacks of that is that we just default straight to like going to those things that are easily measurable.
Yeah. Yeah. The performance metrics that are an easy number to hang your hat on and things like that. Yeah.
Yeah. I'll give you one
I'm
example
always
actually,
reminded of
Simon.
Simon Sinek talking
Oh yeah.
about,
No, no, go.
yeah, go
I'll
ahead.
jump in after you. Now you finish and then I'll jump in after you. I've got an example actually that I
Yeah. I
was
was
going to
saying,
share.
so Simon Sinek always talks about the balance between skills and trust.
Yep.
And, that the best leaders in an organization are those that are even medium skilled but highly trusted. And he said, we have all of these metrics around measuring skills and performance, and virtually no way of measuring trust and impact in a team. And it was exactly what you were saying, right? We keep defaulting back to the simple KPIs. But
No,
your
no, it's right.
example, please.
Yeah, the example is actually from a few years ago. And so it was with claims, same industry we're in now. But what I've worked through with my teams, I guess, let's say from a more disciplined aspect, is to train leaders on Lean Six Sigma so that we can go into things and like from that structured approach, be able to map out what a customer journey looks like end to end and map out what I like referring to as moments of truth. What are the actual definitive moments that if you got really well,
Mm.
make a significant difference, but equally can be the reason why you fail in those experiences. And from them, there was a number of different ones that come out. Of course, some of them are very difficult to work through. Surprisingly, like I was saying, I mean, surprising sometimes, a lot of them are quite simple. And there was one for a motor claims type, whereby for every customer who made a claim for their car, we asked that they send through their rego paper showing their name. And part of the reason for that, theoretically, was to be
Mm.
able to establish ownership. Out of 38,000 claims that had been made over a number of years where that was the requirement, there was only ever one case where that paper ownership did not align with the insurer's name, the insured's name, I should say. However, the requirement itself added 5 to
Yeah.
10 days to every single claim that was put through. And there comes a point at which you say, all right, so what risk appetite am I
Wow.
willing to take here? Like, am I going to put through 38,000 customers in a process that adds 10 days to what they believe should be quite a straightforward and simple interaction, where one was the only
Mm.
one where it would have been required, I guess. That is not a standalone or unique
Yeah.
example. Like these come up all the
Yeah.
time, like everywhere. Everyone I talk to shares examples like this. And that's part of the reason why I coach people on saying just look for the simple
Yep.
things. Like it doesn't have to be complex, just the simple things, the low-hanging fruit.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. I agree. Can we step back a little again to your personal story? I find a lot of people who come into the call center, and I've often said this is part of what you need to think about when you're thinking about attrition. Is a lot of people come into the call center and said, "I'll do this while," or "I'll do this until." And as you articulated, you did it to until you could get a finance role in the company, right? You wanted to use it as a springboard. At some point, though, you kind of popped your head up and went, hang on, I can make a career through this customer thing. Where was that for you? Were you still an agent? Were you a team leader? Were you an ops manager? Where did that kind of realization hit you?
I think a lot of this comes down to like right place, right time, but being ready for it. Like I typically say to people in mentoring and coaching, don't wait for a role to be advertised to then start to get ready for it because it's already too late. And I was really lucky as well. Like when I went to IAG, it was part of a new team at the time. So we were called Flexible Work Team. We had like a whole theme around feel the vibe after five. Like I love those days. Like just all energy. But it was around a team that was built on all part-timers, all working from 5 to 10, and it helped organizationally to consolidate all the call centers. So this is going back 19 years actually. And in doing so, it meant that the team was
Wow.
growing. So I was part of the first batch of people. But then if you're in an environment that is growing quickly, obviously there'll be requirement for some leaders along the way. So I was really lucky. I got the opportunity to jump into a team leader role within about 6 months, I think it was. But I'd shown an interest up front. I'd taken the initiative for that. I think there was an awareness, like in more senior leadership roles, that I was keen to do it. And most people, if you take the initiative, will go and do their part to help you out. I would absolutely give that credit to everybody I've ever met. If they
Mm.
see that you're willing to take the initiative, they'll go out of the way and say, all right, I'll meet you halfway and I'll help you out. I think sometimes my advice, sort of in response to your question, would be that people feel as if others own their development plan, and they don't. Like, you've got to be able to take ownership for at least establishing the foundations to that, articulating what it is that you would like others help with, but perhaps more importantly, what is it that you're going to do yourself to be able to help them do their part easier. And I tried to do that earlier in my career,
Yeah,
and I think it
that
helped out.
is such yeah, that is such wise advice, sage advice, for anybody that is, particularly those that are in that team leader level and wondering where's next. Starting to set their own journey is a great thing. Let's shift gears a little and talk about your view of where is CX now and where is it going. Like, if I asked you to gaze into your crystal ball and look 5 years out, where's CX going? What things are changing?
Yeah, cool. No, I love this conversation because I hear about, I'm involved in this conversation quite frequently, as I'm sure you are, like even more so. Um, I look at it in horizons. And so what I mean by that, let's say near term versus longer term. Near term, I think it's important, very much in
Mm-hmm.
the same way, not to lose sight of, the simple opportunities. Near term, customer demand changes at a rapid pace. So what I did last year organizationally becomes today's minimum demand. What I'll do today that may be innovative, groundbreaking, will become next year's minimum demand. And so it's important not to get complacent like in
Mm.
that. And typically what I find happens, specifically in industries that may have oligopolies or monopolies in them, and there's a lot of complacency. Like, success breeds laziness. That's something Simon Sinek actually says too. Success breeds
Mm.
laziness. And so it's important always to be on your
Yep.
toes and ready to be able to do more, listen to customers to be able to see, okay, so what will they need next? And engage them in building that out. So near term, I'd say, like, it's a lot around saying make things simple, make things seamless, and make it relevant, right? And there's a number of ways you can do that. But I guess a lot of it
Mm.
comes down to those themes. Longer term, God, the conversation could go on for hours. But some of the things that are consistent in my mind are where I think the CX will go. One, technology, absolutely. So AI, machine learning. Like, I'm not going to try to even talk AI with you. Like, it's sort of like lead this like on many fronts, right? I remember seeing your presentation a few months ago with Chat GPT, and I walked out of that, and I'm like, God, I didn't even realize that it could do that. Like, the capability is mind blowing. But I think it would be ignorant to ignore what that can do to again help customer experiences become simpler, more seamless, and relevant. Like, I was reading about vending machines in Japan that use facial recognition to recommend drinks to shoppers based on age and other things like that. That's crazy. Like, it's so simple, but I mean, it's very relevant, right? I
Yep.
think the second one that really stands out to me, and this one I've talked about for years, and I still can't find anyone that does it very well. And that's around use of data. And I think a big part of the reason is there's just so much data available. People trying to work out, well, how do we structure this in a meaningful way? But using data to segment, to personalize
Mm.
experiences, I think customers continue to shout out, get to know me. Stop throwing things at me that are relevant to others. Like, get to know me. You know so much about me. Like, more and more over time, people become concerned about data
Mm.
privacy. So I think they're hesitant to give their personal data to organizations, but perhaps they're more comfortable, one, if they know it's going to be secure, but two, if they know it's going to add value to them. If I'm going to give you this information about me, how are you going to use it so
Yep.
that it benefits me? And that's where I think it's going to become much more
Absolutely.
relevant, like over time. Like, this data is available everywhere. And organizationally, for that matter, like we very much build our foundation on how can we use data to make things simpler, more seamless, personalized for customers, relevant. And the third one that really stands out to me is like making customer experience more entertaining and live. And so what I mean by that is I'm
Okay.
amazed at when I speak with younger people. My youngest sister is 15 years younger than me. So there's a fair difference in like the our ages and the way that she will engage in
Yeah.
various experiences to what I will and so what other people will. But just like live shopping, like
Hmm.
going on platforms like TikTok, in China, for example, Taobao, like just does live shopping and it's just a normal occurrence. We don't really
Mm-hmm.
have that here as much, I would say, but in countries around the world, live shopping is a thing. It's like a middle between, let's say, the regular or historical bricks and mortar shopping and digital shopping, but it's more like you're engaging with somebody through the experience. Um, and like I said, there's going to be a lot of things that come through with customer experience in the future, but they're three that stand out for me. I think it's like you don't want to lose that connection with customers, and so
And the,
this helps with all of that.
And they're three really great examples, I think, Angelo. In the book that I just wrote, I talk a lot about mass personalization, and it's been a term that's been around in marketing for probably 30 years, but we've never really done it.
Mm.
We've always, marketed to a homogenized group rather than marketing to you specifically, and that includes how do you like to communicate? So when you go on chat, do you like it to be really informal and have emojis and common shortenings and things like that? Or do you still like it to be quite structured and business like? So how do you want that relationship? And I think we're starting to get to the point where we can now deliver that.
Yeah, I think so too. I think there are some technologies that have been around and evolving over time to help enable it. I think that the structure of organizations hasn't kept up with it or knows entirely how to be able to use that to their benefit and more importantly, the benefit of customers. Like I recall sort of years ago looking at things like, you know,
Mm.
um, agent routing as a very simple example, but being able to like customize that in such a way that I can link somebody in my team or connect somebody in my team with a customer so that the engagement experience is a relevant and positive one. Not everybody, just because they're in a, let's say, customer facing
Mm.
environment, will have the skill set or comfortability to engage with every type of person that comes through to speak with them. And that's a very simple example, right? I think that
Agree.
technology moves at such a pace that we just need to keep an open mind to how we can do the same. Like, and when I say we, I mean like everyone. I'm generalizing, um, and not stay in our ways. Like, what are customers telling us? What is technology enabling? How do we fit our risk appetite somewhere in the middle there? There you go. There's some insurance tech terminology so that we can benefit from
Yeah.
testing the boundaries in a way that we're comfortable getting things wrong, but learning along the way so that ultimately you have a better outcome.
Yep, yep, and I totally agree. I think there's some great things we can do in CX that don't require technology. But I'm not going to change. I'm still shocked at how many companies, and I'm not just calling out Australia, I'm calling this out globally, are still operating off essentially a 1970s model that says, you come to me.
Yeah.
You visit my shop, you come to my website, you ring my phone number, or you email my email address. And research is showing us that actually what the customers of the future are saying is, come to me where I am. So if I'm in Discord, I want you in Discord. If I'm in Taobao, I want you in Taobao. If I'm, on another platform, I'm on Reddit, I want you on Reddit. So, there's still quite a lot of this you come to me stuff. I'm going to pivot to my favorite bit of an interview with everybody that I do, and it's three great little questions. And the first one is, What and think of this out. You're not at work. You're not at Honey. It's just Angelo out in the street doing what he does. What makes a great customer experience for you personally?
It goes back to something I just alluded to earlier, and it's around just engage with me. Like I don't want to know about the processes that you're bound by, or the tech, or the system that you're using, or the product or service that I purchased that has certain terms and conditions. A great customer experience doesn't have to mean that I get the outcome that I'm looking for, but I do want to be able to have a conversation with you where I feel like you're listening and you're looking for a way for us to be able to work together. Like a true engagement experience, like a true
Mm.
conversation.
Okay, and would you include speed in that? Because there's a whole lot of stuff around the contact center industry has been for years that it's all about answering calls in 20 seconds, and I often challenge that and say to people, would you rather be answered in 20 seconds, but 50% of the time you're going to have to get transferred somewhere
Mm.
else, or get answered in 2 minutes, but just about every single time that person that answers your call is going to be able to solve it for you. Which way would you prefer to go?
So I would prefer the latter of those because I have an expectation that if I'm speaking with you and I've been directed to speak with you, then you should be able to have a conversation with me to help resolve my query, right? I think what can help a lot of these organizations is they just set
Yep.
a clear expectation up front. So whether that expectation is that how long you might be waiting for in a very simple way, or another clear expectation might be, let's say I do end up calling somebody and I'm speaking with them and they're a new trainee. I don't know why some people are hesitant to let customers know that. I tell every new person that I speak with, just let the customer know that you're new, and then that way they know that, like, if you need to put them on hold to find something out, or if you need to, just check something like on your system, whatever it might be, people are more patient. Just more importantly than that specific scenario, it sort of goes back to just set clear expectations. Treat people as people. And I think sometimes what happens in engagement
Yep.
experiences that are not good,
Yeah.
people are not treated as people. They're treated as commodities, or, like buyers, like arbitrary beings that just fit like a tick or an X on a box. And I hate that. Like there are many interactions I have with companies where I
Yeah.
don't get what it is that I wanted, but the engagement experience is brilliant. So I commend the person I spoke with, and I actually email like through later on and say, I just want to say really good work. I didn't get what I wanted, but the person tried to help and they were very clear in like why that wasn't the case. So that's the way I look at it.
Mm. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That's no. That's an awesome answer. I know listeners are going to love that. Along those lines, what do you wish companies did more of? And you may have just answered that. Is it expectation setting, or what just generally would you like to see brands doing more of in the CX space?
I think, is it all right if I use a metaphor to describe this? Because I've heard a metaphor on this maybe a month or so ago.
Sure.
And that metaphor was from somebody named Stephen Van Belleghem, who has some really good podcasts and things that are based on like CX specifically. And the way that he put it, and I enjoyed it, like it's part of the reason why I share it. So hopefully I
Hmm.
described it accurately. But he was talking about a rhino. And so a rhino wakes up in the morning, it thinks about eating, for example, and it goes out looking for food. Now, there are some flaws in the way that a rhino is built. Like if a lion was going to go out and wanted to eat the rhino, it wouldn't. Like it'd say, I don't want to do that today. But a rhino has poor eyesight, poor sense of smell. It's a perfect target for poachers. Doesn't know when humans are coming, right? But the lion's not going to try to attack it.
Mm.
But there is an animal called an oxpecker, and the oxpecker sits on the back
Yeah.
of the rhino and not only like eats the parasites that sit on the rhino, but it has brilliant eyesight. And when it sees a human, it makes a noise that is different to when it sees anything else. And the rhino recognizes it, so it knows to run. And so the way that he put it, like Stephen Van Belleghem, is that he said that oxpecker is like a partner for life for the rhino. It's there like it's always around, like you said, sort of be where be where I am and where I want you to be. It's not intrusive. It brings value at the right time.
Hmm.
And I think that's what more companies need to do. They need to think from the perspective of how can I be always
Oh,
around for
yeah.
the customer, not intrusive, bring value, but at the right time. And part of the reason I use the
Yeah.
metaphor, although I
Wow.
probably
What a
did a poor
great
job of
metaphor.
describing it, is because it helps me remember those four things, like quite easily.
Yeah, for sure. No, that's awesome. All right, last question, because we're right at time. What book are you reading right now? Or what podcast are you listening to? What's influencing you?
So I'm big on like books and podcasts from athletes. I just love it. I just think athletes like are high intensity, always moving forward, just a very hard work ethic. The book that I'm reading at the moment is one that I've read before, but it's The Mamba Mentality by Kobe Bryant. Just a work ethic that's beyond my comprehension, to be honest
Hmm.
with you. Um, and equally, like I probably spend more time watching documentaries on athletes than what I do reading them. But that's what inspires me. I find that what sort of grounds roots, or where the grassroots, where these people have come from and how hard they've worked to do what they're doing, um, is unbelievable. They're great stories. And I find Kobe Bryant, for me personally anyway, epitomizes that.
Fantastic. Look, that's been amazing. I know the people that listen to this podcast, all three of them, are
I'm sure it's more than that, much more than that.
absolutely going to love this episode. I'm hoping. So look, they're going to love it. But Angelo, thanks for being on CX Sessions.
Yeah, thank you, Simon. I really enjoyed the conversation, so I appreciate it.
That's it for this session. Let us know what you think or recommend someone for a future session at cxii.com.au. This podcast is brought to you by the Customer Experience Innovation Institute. Thanks for joining us and tune in again soon to hear more CX sessions.